Come join me May 1st through the 6th so that you can rest, rediscover your strengths, reconnect with yourself and those physicians like you who are ready to leave work at work, and re-energize. This is the invitation for you to make 2023 your year. Join me in Costa Rica in this really amazing, non-judgmental, intimate physician community. I am gonna show you how to rest and how to recharge. Let's transform your brain, level it up so that you can start to dream the life that you always wanted this year in 2023. I can't wait to learn all about what kind of year you're gonna have after this conference. Take care.
Hello. Welcome to Beyond ADHD, a physician's perspective. I am Dr. Mercado-Marmarosh. I'm a family medicine physician practicing in rural Texas. I used to be hindered by my ADHD, but I now see it as a gift that helps me show up as the person I was always meant to be, both in my work and in my personal life. In the past 2 years, I've come to realize that unlearning some of my beliefs and some of my habits were just as important as learning the new set of skills.
Hello. How are we doing today? I am so excited to have a dear friend with me, Dr. Mary Leung, and she is in New York, but she is actually from Hong Kong, and I am so excited to talk to her today. She's a hem-onc physician who is actually helping other physicians start to live the life of their dreams. So she herself is going to tell us her journey, but she realized that charting was not the thing to do every day, all the time. And so we're going to have a conversation on why it is important to realize that you can take breaks, you can reset, you can do things your way. And whether you have ADHD or not, you can still live the life of your dreams. And she's here to share her story and to share how she's now helping others do the same.
Wow, thank you for the amazing introduction, Diane.
Anytime.
All right, so I guess a little bit about myself. Yes, I grew up in Hong Kong, and both my parents are physicians. I mean, they're retired now, but when I was growing up, they really loved their career and what they were doing, and sometimes they would talk about patients, like what they would do with each other during dinner time. So for me, it was a natural exposure to medicine and being a doctor. And I thought, growing up, I was always taught to always help people, whatever we can do to help. And so it was just natural for me to say, hey, you know what, I want to be a doctor too, just to help people. And my parents never forced me into medicine, and my other siblings, they're not in medicine at all. And so I think this medical path was just a natural thing for me. I think it suits my personality too. So then fast forward to 12th grade, that my parents decided to send me to the United States to study. And that was 12th grade. And of course, senior year in high school, it was kind of a cultural shock. And I went from not speaking English outside of English class at school to speaking English all the time. And I remember I had to translate, in my head from Cantonese to English before I would speak, sentences. And I was taking all these advanced courses, American history that I didn't know much about, and applying to colleges all at the same time. So it was, and of course, living away from home. So all these things came together. And I think even though it was quite a different and stressful year, it really helped shape who I am. And it really made me grow a lot as a person.
So, Mary, tell me, during that time, did you decide which boarding school you wanted to go to, or like how did you arrive at which one you were coming in the US?
Oh yeah, so I actually applied. So it was kind of like a college entrance process. And so how I chose was I actually only applied to two boarding schools, and they're both in the Northeast region, New England region, and only because a couple of my friends went to those schools already. So I was like, well, I wanted to be with them. So I just applied to two. And thankfully, actually accepted by both of them. And I just chose the one that my good friends were in. So.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point, right? Like that we sometimes become brave, or because I mean that's bravery and courageous to like uproot yourself, especially your senior year when you're like, this is supposed to be the chill year where I'm just gonna write it out and like finish and then move on, right? But like, yeah, you took a plunge, but then you did it with the knowing that I'm gonna go with my friends, right? So like it's always so amazing how what we're able to do when we feel like there's a support system there, even though you don't know exactly how things are going to turn out, but you know that there might be one or two humans on the other side that you can lean into and then it'll work out, right? So I think this is so true about life, I really think. And I think that's how you bet on yourself to come and do that, and then you bet on it's going to work out. And then like you said, it was stressful, but you were seeing the big picture on the other side. Did you know you wanted to do med school at that time, or you were too young at that time, you think?
Yeah, I think I can't exactly pinpoint when I wanted to become a doctor, but it was a pretty young age. And I think at that time I was already, pretty set on becoming one. And so, studying in the US was kind of like part of the rite of passage. And I think, as you mentioned, I think we as human beings, our desire to belong is very strong. I think we're not designed to be alone. And so, if we have some commonalities with other people, we tend to lean toward them.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so tell me, so you do all the things and then how did you where did you end up doing residency, or when did you realize, okay, my God, this way of medicine, this charting thing, this is not my thing?
Yeah, so medical school and then residency, I actually chose to be in New York because of my husband. And we met when we were in medical school. And I was in medical school and he was in dental school at that time. And so because his family is from here, the New York area. So I chose, okay, you know what? Since I already moved 8,000 miles away, I might as well be with someone's family. And so I did. And for residency and fellowship, I just stayed in the same program. I think at that time I didn't really realize charting was really a big thing because we never have a lot of patient load. Like, of course, inpatient doing consultations was very busy, but it was, I never really had the outpatient experience with a full load of patients. So only when I started to become an attending. So after fellowship, I took my first job, and this is still my first job. And that I joined 5 other physicians in a group. So it was a private group practice. And that, several years later, it actually became a part of the hospital practice. So anyway, when I first started, I already have some patients to start with. And 3 months after I was in the group, one of the doctors retired. So I had even more patients. And so very quickly, I had a pretty full load. But at that time, we were still using paper charts. So with the paper charts, those who actually still remember, it's actually a lot more simple. And people actually tend to document less. And of course, there would be a challenge to read someone's handwriting sometimes, but the charting time was pretty short. And a lot of times you would just kind of jot notes down when you're seeing the patients because you would bring the physical paper chart with you. So charting wasn't really a big problem at that time, only when maybe like about 10, 11 years ago when we transitioned to the electronic system, that started to become a problem. I mean, I've used, of course, electronic records before, even when I was in training and in the hospital too. But with a full load of patients, I mean, at that time I was seeing, 25 to 30 patients at that time. And so electronic charting was really a big problem. And I think a couple of things is like, I had the notion that, I wanted the chart, my notes to be very neat, very organized, very detailed. And so that was one thing. Second thing was I had the belief that I had to keep my patients' appointments as punctual or as on time as possible. So what ended up happening was that, one more thing was I felt like I had to really to show that I was paying full attention to my patients. And because of that, I felt like it was kind of rude to chart in front of the patients. So all these things add together that I was sacrificing my charting time till the end of the day, for a lot of the charts, not all the charts, but, probably sometimes even half the charts. And what ended up happening was even though my official on paper clinic day would end at 4 o'clock, I wouldn't go home until past 7, and a lot of times I didn't even have my charts done, but I wanted to go home because my kids were young at that time and I wanted to catch them a little bit and send them to bed, and I would do more charting most of the nights. And so, that kind of went on. The cycle started again and again. And I was just really feeling tired. I didn't feel like I had a life. I felt like I wanted to quit many, many times. But then I felt stuck because I was like, well, what else could I do? We weren't financially capable of me not working. And then I also didn't want to move because I felt like I had my, married family now. I had my new friends, and I just, I felt belong here. And I mean, I still do, but at that time I just felt like, for me to pick up everything to move, it was just too much for me. So that, I think that went on for quite a few years, really, until the pandemic hit. That's when everything happened, right?
Everything unravels then. Yeah.
Yeah, so the pandemic hit, and then of course, I was seeing a lot of oncology patients, and they had to get treatment, get the chemotherapy. So we were trying to kind of just really choose or select who absolutely had to get chemotherapy to get therapy. And the other people, if we thought that they could delay or even switch to some oral regimen or something like that, we would try to do that just to minimize the hospital or, the patient load. So at that time, I was on average seeing about a third of the patients as opposed to my full load. And I was able to get home on time or even earlier than on time. And I was amazed. I was like, wow, that's what it feels like
You're
to
like,
go
I
home.
can have a life.
Yes. I was like, well, I didn't really want the pandemic, but this actually opened my eyes to what feel like to be a human being again, to have life outside of work. And, at that time I picked up baking. I was like doing all these things with my kids, and it was, I felt even, so I didn't, I did and I didn't realize how unhappy I was. And then in the pandemic, I actually felt like I lit up inside, and I felt like, oh wow, there was hope, that I could actually enjoy medicine again, and just have this little idea that what if I could feel the same way and actually go home, on time, when the pandemic was over or when I had a full load of patients again. So then at the same time is I was introduced to life coaching. I had no clue what that was. I thought coaching was just for sports, for athletes. And so I was curious. So and then it was happened to be like physicians who were coaches. And so then I joined a women physician coaching group program. And that really turned me upside down in a very, really, really good way. I just learned that, well, I'm actually in control a lot of the times, and I also I get to decide how I feel based on how I view things. So that really kind of, it makes sense, but then I never thought of it that way. I mean, we were never taught that. We just think that, oh, what our situation is the cause of, it's the cause of the problem. It's how we are. We can't really change things, but what it's really important is actually how we view the situation. It's kind of like, if it's snowing outside, like someone would think that, hey, yay, I can play in the snow with my dog. Or another person would think that, oh no, I have to shovel the snow. That is really not a pleasant thing to do. So I think how we view things is really affect how we feel. And so then I thought, well, how about, instead of having to chart all day, all night, is it possible to actually cut down on my charting so I could go home on time and spend with my kids? So at that time, I was working with my coach, and we were just really working on how my day was structured. And we figured out that a lot of the times was during first half of the day, I was pretty good, was able to keep up with the charting with the patients. But the second half of the day, what was happening was I was thinking that, oh, I had half more days to work. I getting tired. I don't really want to do this much longer. And so all these things just make me feel like it was a burden. And I was getting kind of frustrated. I was getting tired, and I was shutting down mentally. So because of all that I was, really slowing down physically and mentally. And so I wasn't able to keep up with my charts. And then of course came the end of the day that I was even more tired, and having a pile of charts to do. And I started to forget the details of the patients. I was like, okay, who had a murmur again? Or, like, am I mixing little things up? I mean, of course, major things I wouldn't mix up, but just tiny little things. And so that got me even more frustrated. and so then I was kind of redirected to say, okay, what do you ultimately want? So my ultimate goal is really to spend more time with my family. So to do that is I had to go home on time. And to be able to go home on time is I had to be, I have to finish my charts, right? And so what kind of energy to use to finish the chart is actually I learned that in general, there are positive energies and negative energies. So the negative type of energy or fuel are kind of like the stress, the frustration, the anger, those type of negative emotions, as opposed to the positive emotions. Those are like the focus, determined, gratitude, content, those types. So and I also learned that the negative emotions, even though they can push you to do things, they don't last long, or you will feel even more burned out after using them for a while. So by choosing or deliberately to use the positive emotions, it's long lasting, and it actually makes you feel happier afterwards. So my fuel was focused and determination, that I have my end goal in mind, and of course with the charting, strategy is also important, but the mindset part is really what fuels everything, right? And so I focused on really seeing the patient, doing the chart, and I decided that what, I'm just going to be focused on that one patient at a time. So when the patient is telling me things, it's okay to also do my charts at the same time, because it's all about that patient. And it actually saves me time, so I don't have to remember it afterwards or forget some things that the patient told me beforehand. So then just with more and more practice, that I was slowly able to go home half an hour earlier, a little bit more, and now I'm actually going home, as opposed to past 7 and still have work to do, I'm going home 5 to 5:30 with everything done.
Awesome. Wow. So many nuggets you gave in there. And I want to point out some of the things. It's interesting how, like you just said, people will interpret a certain situation differently, right? Like the pandemic is a neutral thing, but what you think of it made all the difference, right? Like one person could have thought, this is the best thing ever, kind of like what you thought, right? Or another person could have thought, this is the worst thing ever, right? And then that happens, right? But so for you, because you were a specialist and because of how dangerous the situation, procedures and different things were, your workload went to 1/3, right? Mm-hmm. For me, being primary care doctor, my workload went up. It didn't go down because because we just had to be the front line as primary care doctor. Right. So for me, it unraveled the situation of like, oh shit, I can't keep doing what I'm doing because this is not working out. And for you, it unraveled, oh my God, is this what life is supposed to be like? Right. And so it was like different thoughts, but they eventually both got us to the same thing, which was, are we practicing the way we want to practice? Like, are we like, who has ownership of our time, right? Like, and why is somebody else's time more important than mine?
Mm-hmm. And I think, Yes, that's a very important thing. And I think a lot of us feel like we blame that, oh, I don't have time. I don't have time to do this or that. But in actuality is, we all have 24 hours a day, and we actually get to take ownership of the time that we have, and we get to plan what we want to do. And notice that I say get to, not should or have to. It's like, I feel like when we say we get to, is that we're in control. We have a choice what to
Yes,
do.
exactly. And I think that statement that you just made is what makes all the difference when you decide that you do have a choice, and not making a decision is still a choice. And we don't realize that, because I think in medicine, we've been told always do first for the patient, always do da 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 da. And yes, of course, I want to take care of my patients. But the day that I realized that I had to be the more important patient, that if I wasn't right, then it didn't matter exactly how well I showed up for them, because I wasn't right. and not
Mhm.
and not right as in like, but you know what I mean. If you're not rested, if you're not like 100% happy that you're there, you don't even realize you're burned out at times, because you've been doing, like you said, the same cycle over and over and over for a while. You thought this is the way it's supposed to be. But then when you get a taste of what it could look like, then you're like, wait, it doesn't have to be this way. Like, who taught us that we're supposed to do all this stuff outside of work? Like, where, how is this acceptable, right?
Exactly. And it's just like, as you mentioned, that until we get better or get a taste of being better, we never realize how bad we were feeling. And a lot of us physicians, I think, me included, that I didn't realize that I was burnt out. And I was, more angry. I was, just kind of more tend to really short in temper, although not show it all the time, and I, just realized now that, hey, at that time I was really, really burnt out, because I was not happy, I was dissatisfied, I was frustrated, stressed, all these things. And also it's like, since I'm a hematologist oncologist, I have to throw in this. It's like, for example, for patients with anemia, they would be walking in, it's like, oh, I feel a little bit tired, and meanwhile they're very, very anemic, to the point that you would actually want to think about doing a transfusion. And but then since they're, young, healthy, otherwise, I'm like, okay, take some iron, and then we'll see you back in a couple weeks, right? And so when they came back for follow-up, they're like, wow, I feel so much better. I didn't realize how bad I felt. And this happened over and over again. So I think, and it's kind of like also with cataracts, right? They didn't realize that they were seeing the different colors until they had the cataract surgery, that, oh, it's like, oh, wow, the wallpaper looks like that color. So I feel like, yes, for me is, with the pandemic, of course, I did not want the pandemic to happen for people's health, but for my experience was really an eye-opening experience. And that I really think that everything happened for a reason, and that I was also, being introduced to coaching, and I was able to change my clinic day really 180 degrees. And I now even have time to, I had time to get my coaching certification, and also now helping other physicians to go through what I went through.
It's crazy how you went from not having enough time to all of a sudden having all the time to even like become a coach yourself and help other people. So tell us what that's been like.
Yeah, and I think also that how I feel is so much different from, say, if you asked me 3 years ago. I think the most common emotions that I had 3 years ago was I was stressed, I was overwhelmed, frustrated. And now I feel, I really feel grateful. I feel content. I feel actually, joy. And even though I'm actually doing more things than before, I don't feel like I'm doing more things because to me is at work, doing my full-time attending job, I am helping patients for the most part the way that I want to help them. And I also get to connect with them in a human way, more than just talking about their illness or their diagnosis. And outside of work is I also get to do what I love to do. I just, discovered that I love coaching and for myself and to help other people. So this to me does not feel like work. And I learn a lot, and I learn a lot from people I coach too. So I feel like this two-way street is really enrich me emotionally and mentally. And I also, learn to take good care of myself because, as you mentioned, I always thought that really taking care of others first before me. I was like, I didn't have to take care of myself. What is that? I would just be, thinking about my patients, my family, friends, and without really taking good care of myself. And of course, with coaching, I realized that, hey, we have to take care of ourselves first. We have to, otherwise we won't be able to give what we don't have. And if it's kind of like on the airplane, they always tell us to put on our own oxygen mask before helping others put theirs on. So it's the same way that is if you don't have the fuel to go on, if you're running dry, you just can't give your best to your patients or your family.
Yes, that's exactly what I always say. So tell me, was taking breaks one of the ways you put your own oxygen on?
Yes. So another thing that I learned is, I used to think that I should just be going on, especially at work, just go straight and without any breaks because I would be saving time by not taking breaks. Like I would just be taking the absolute necessary bathroom breaks that's before my bladder burst. And sometimes I even think twice before going. So then I just realized that that wasn't really helpful because as I was going on and on and on, I was just really getting tired and I was slowing down physically and mentally. And then I realized that, hey, you know what? Many things take breaks, like, cars need a break to refuel. And, a lot of engines, they don't run all day, all night long. They need to be turned off. And so we as, really living, breathing human beings, we got to do the same. And I think a lot of actually companies, schools, they understand the concept, but maybe not so much in the medical field or in physicians. Like schools, they have scheduled recess, lunchtime, right? A lot of big companies, they also have scheduled breaks, for lunchtime. But for some reason, in the physician realm of things, even though lunchtime is scheduled, a lot of times we choose not to take it because we thought that, oh, we need to catch up this, catch up that. So that is really not healthy. And I feel like, with the break time of interrupting what you're doing constantly is you get to rest, you get to rest your brain, just to take a break, because sometimes you don't realize that how overdrive you're really being in the state of. So and especially physicians, like we think that we're super beings. We think that we're exempt from physical turmoil sometimes, or we forget about that we're human beings. So I think that's really important to take a break. And this is from me, the no break physician in the past, right? So taking a break, you get to also, recharge, just really taking even just a mental pause of what you're doing, or just get up and walk, that really kind of like breathe some fresh air. And just simple things like that. It doesn't even have to be a long time. Like it could just be a couple minutes, and then you feel refreshed, and then your brain can actually refocus better afterwards. And also, there's a chance for you to regroup, kind of like even a quick chance for you to reflect on, oh, did I do this right? Or what if after the break, maybe I want to do things a little bit differently, just have the time to pause and explore, and get ready to experiment something else if you need to. And I think recharging our body is just so important, that we get drained, and as we talked about earlier, that as we run dry, we really can perform at the optimal situation, that it's just not very helpful for our patients or for people around us. So I think taking these scheduled breaks is very important. And I also want to just quickly mention that even though it's important to take these scheduled breaks to reset, recharge, renew, refuel, it is important to minimize the unscheduled breaks. So the unscheduled breaks that I refer to are like, say, if you get interrupted by your coworkers unexpectedly, or if your mind is wandering off and thinking that, oh, what is on social media, Facebook, or, oh, I heard this email notification, let me go check my email. So those are kind of the unscheduled breaks. And if you kind of entertain your mind to go ahead and do that, you will end up being distracted, and you will end up taking more time to finish the work.
Yes, those are such important nuggets. Again, if you have ADHD or not, if you implement these strategies, they can really make a difference. Like we all get into this like routine, which routines can be very helpful, but when we are not slowing down enough to reevaluate whether that routine is actually helping us and providing us, refueling us with energy, or if it's actually taking away from us, and then if you don't give yourself that space, you might miss it. And so you're so right about the breaks. Like most of us want to keep going because we think we're in the flow, but we don't realize we're like walking at like turtle speed instead of like just rabbit speed or whatever speed you want to be at, and realizing that some days we are going to be at turtle speed, and that's okay, and some days we're at rabbit speed, and it is what it is. But realizing that you are choosing, or you're conscious, or you're aware that you are doing what is supported for you, makes a big difference. So Mary, where can people find you? Because I'm sure they're like, okay, I gotta learn more about her. We gotta work together. We gotta do some things. Tell me, where can they find you?
Yeah, so thank you. So I have the website is www.shiningwithgratitudemd.com. And because, I have that name is because I really feel so grateful. And I just want everyone to feel the same, that that we're just thankful for a situation, good or bad, because it's always teaching us something. And I always feel like we can choose to be grateful for whatever is, coming to us, and we can work hard to improve improve our lives. So that's my website, and I offer one-on-one coaching for physicians. And you can also find me on Facebook, Mary Leung, and LinkedIn at Mary Leung MD.
Awesome. So I always ask this question of my guests. So let's say that my listeners just tuned in because, we have wandering attention. What is one nugget you want them to take away?
There's so many nuggets, right? So I think the one thing is that you are in control. I think that, even though there are situations, of course, there are things that we cannot control, but just control what you can control, because there actually, if you explore it, there are more things that you can do than you think at first. And for whatever things that you cannot control, don't argue with it, but just think of ways that what you can do to improve the situation if it's something that is, according to your plan.
Awesome. So be flexible, but also have a plan in mind so that you can try to get to your destination. Yeah. So in the next 3 years, what do you hope to do for fun?
For fun, well, I always love to spend time with my family. I love traveling, and so I would like to travel more, and of course, to visit my family in Hong Kong, and just to go to different places before my kids grow up and go to college.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us and giving us your story. And as you heard it, guys and girls, it is important to realize we all have a story, and our story matters. And we can change our story if we don't like the way it's going, right? Like, that's the thing. Sometimes we don't even realize that we didn't like the way it was going, right? We have no awareness. But what if we could find ways to work smarter instead of harder? Because all of us became physicians or by working hard. I mean, even if, as Mary had 2 parents who were physicians, and some of us have never had that opportunity, and we didn't even know what we were walking into, but we came through because we put in the work. And now, what about we put in the work so we can actually enjoy what we're doing, and so that it could be easy or easier, or it could feel like it feels to Mary and me that this is fun. Like, we get to design it and have that privilege to support others to practice medicine also in their own terms.
Yes, and yes, it is possible to enjoy life and medicine again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending your time with me. I really believe that time is your most valuable asset. Please subscribe to the podcast, share with your colleagues, and don't forget to check out my website at adhd-lifecoach.com, where you can find out about my upcoming coaching group classes, as well as free master classes and other exciting events that are happening.